Welcome to the Rockabye Revenue Podcast with me, Abby Watson. I'm a mum of 4 and a business strategist, and I train people to become hypnobirthing teachers. In the last decade, I've built a thriving baby business that grew beyond my wildest dreams. This podcast is for you if you run a business or dream of running a business in the birth and baby industry. You want to change lives whilst making more money. I'm talking about creating sustainable income whilst being present for the people that matter most. I believe for our baby businesses to have the impact we desire, we must be rewarded. On this podcast, expect me to share actionable strategies without the jargon. I've been where you are. I've built a business while raising 4 little ones, and now I'm here to help you turn your passion into profit while creating the life you've always dreamed of. So let's get started. Hello, lovely one. How are you doing today? I have been thinking about our wonderful work recently and how impactful our roles can be. And equally, how careful we need to be when it comes to being that wonderful support in the lives of the people that we work with. So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming that you're a birth or baby business owner. So perhaps you're a doula, hypnobirthing teacher, or you are someone who works after babies are born, like sleep consultant, baby massage instructor, baby yoga, all these kind of wonderful services, and your focus is supporting mothers and mothers-to-be. And we do this work because it's so deep in our hearts that we want to help, right? And our industry is pretty unique that it attracts such heart-centered and wonderful, often women, to this industry. And it's one of the reasons that I created this podcast, because I know you come to this work with a full heart, with all the passion, but perhaps the business side of it might be the thing that you struggle most with. So that's why I created this podcast. Now, today, I am talking about the way we are in our roles. Now, what does this have to do with the business side of things? Well, I am a huge believer that yes, we need incredible marketing. We need to understand how to make bookings. Absolutely. Yeah. But we also have to ensure that what we are offering and how we are doing it is the best that it possibly can be. Otherwise, oh my goodness, that will filter into the way that we promote our services. If we feel like we're not actually doing a good job when we're working with clients, I'm not sure we'd market it with the same certainty. Because let's go back to what I said earlier. We're heart-centered and, we want to know that we are selling something that matters. So the other day, I was thinking about this because of something that had really irritated me. So as I've talked about on this podcast before many times, I have been having a really challenging time recently with my children in terms of last year all of them were diagnosed autistic, speech and language problems, other things, one of them ADHD, dyslexia, the list goes on. But, more than those kind of like air quotes, labels, the thing that has taken my energy and time is the worrying about them, worrying about their mental well-being, worrying about their self-esteem, worrying about how they felt they feel when they're not at home with me and they're in school. And our greatest challenge has been with our eldest son, who is now at secondary school, and he hasn't been able to attend since December time, despite huge efforts from both us and school. And ultimately it's because it's not the right place for him. He does need, because of his challenging and complex needs, he needs a small environment. He needs very calm, very nurturing adults, and he needs a great deal of support. And of course, that isn't our opinion. That is, what school understand about him. It's what professionals such as speech and language professionals understand about him. Yet, oh my gosh, we have been up against a crappy, there is many other words I could use, system, The SEND system in this country is diabolical, and even though we have all this evidence, it is not being listened to. And after his review that we had recently that went really well, all the paperwork went to the local authority and they said, no, he'll be fine in the school that he's in, and totally ignored it. And oh my gosh, it has been so upsetting. I am drained from the fight already, yet there is a way to go, a long way to go. And ultimately, at the heart of this is a boy, a lovely boy, a quiet, gentle, capable boy that isn't getting what he's entitled to get. He's already years behind academically. He's already very socially isolated. And I feel like this is going to go on and on for a very long time. Anyway, I could have cut a long story short there, couldn't I? But the reason I'm telling you this is it has felt blooming awful, and it has absolutely pushed me to my limits. It really has. And I have shed tears. I've wanted to go and murder people. It's a bit far-fetched. Please don't repeat that anywhere else. But yeah, I've felt anger, I've felt frustration, I've felt sadness, I've felt everything. And it has had a huge toll on my own well-being as much as everybody else's as well in the family. Now, the reason that I'm telling you this is because other people's responses to what we've been experiencing have had huge impacts on how I feel. And many of the responses I know we sometimes have in the work that we do as baby business owners. So when on Monday I went to this lovely supportive group for parents of children with special needs, it was great to be surrounded by other people who get it. But as I was telling my story, it was met with, everyone's experiencing this. The system is wrecked. And it really made me feel like, oh gosh, so what is the point in fighting? It also made me feel a bit like, so I'm just one of many. Why am I struggling so much with that? Why am I moaning? The next day I had a meeting about my other son, who were also having difficulties with the system and getting him the right support. And the lovely Senko at his school, who I've got such a good relationship with her, love her, absolutely love her. I mentioned our scenario with our oldest child that she knows because he used to go to that school. And she again repeated, the system is awful. It's happening to everyone. And I couldn't stop replaying these conversations in my mind. It's happening to everyone. These are the stories I hear daily. And it made me think about my time as a hypnobirthing teacher. When I'd work with clients and, they'd tell me about an appointment where they were basically pushed into an intervention that they didn't want, or they felt not listened to, or they had their plans for a home birth scrapped, And I would think, this is happening to everyone. This system is wrecked. And maybe sometimes I even said that. And I wanted to share this on this podcast today because I really think there's a fine line between validating people and letting them know they're not alone and dismissing people. So I understand that when I got those responses about my situation, they were from a good place. They weren't meant to hurt or invalidate me. They were from a really kind and caring space. But it didn't feel like that. It actually made me feel defeated, and it made me feel like, I need to just stop moaning about it then. Why am I not strong enough like everybody else then? So I want to put it out to you that, when we are working with expectant parents and new parents, there will be many times where they will share things with you that are, of course, huge things in their life. So that might be challenges dealing with the maternity system. It might be feeding challenges. It might be sleeping challenges, mental health challenges, all these things that, often come with the process of having a baby, bringing up the baby, the impact it has on the wider family. And we might hear these things over and over again, and we might know that a lot of these problems are systemic. They are a result of systems that are not fit for purpose. But we do want to be careful that we are showing the people that are weighed down by this that we do hear them and that we are affirming their power. Because just saying, everyone's dealing with this, the system is awful and it's been awful for years, or our culture is so terrible when it comes to new mothers, may feel like we're validating them because ultimately we're saying you're not alone, but actually it's shutting them down, Actually, where do they go next with that? It's almost like, no big deal, that's just the way it is. And that shouldn't be the case. So having thought about this after, it made me think, what can we say? We don't want to deny that actually a lot of the crappy things that happen aren't because of a system. It absolutely is. We don't want to deny that. But we also want to make sure that we are allowing that person to feel they've still got their power, So I remember when that lady at the support group said that to me, I actually put my big girl pants on and I said, I know a lot of people are experiencing this, but that don't make me feel any better. It doesn't, because it's my baby, it's my son. And that makes me feel like, well, what's the point then? And, I could see, like, she, I said it in such a kind way. And I could see that was a bit of a reflection for her, because no doubt she says that to so many other people because she runs these meetings. And she said, yeah, like, what can you do? What can we do? And I thought, yes, that's what it's about. So, yes, it's okay to say, oh gosh, that must be so hard. That's awful. That shouldn't be how it is. And it's okay to acknowledge the failures of a system, of a culture, So saying, oh, sadly, I hear this too many times, I hear this too many times. But then affirm their power. What can we do in this situation? What do you need to do? What do you need to communicate in this situation? You know, because we want that person to leave feeling empowered rather than disempowered. And as much as so many people are up against systems, are up against, terrible things that we have, part of the culture that totally disregard, like new mothers and babies and all these things, like individuals can get what they need when they push for it. And this is exactly what I'm blooming learning through my situation with my children. And a lot of people will say to me, Abby, the people who get what they need, they're not necessarily the most needy. They're the people that shout the loudest. And I hear that and I'm like, oh my gosh, but I am not the person who shouts the loudest. I'm not. It's not in my nature. I find it really challenging. It wrecks my nervous system to feel like that awkward one, that problem, I'm the good girl. I'm the people pleaser. And I'm also not going to accept things just because that's the way it is. And maybe I need a whole new podcast episode actually about the truth about advocating. Because let's face it, as hypnobirthing teachers, doulas, as coaches that work with new mums, we do talk about advocating for yourself, but it's blooming hard. It's blooming hard. Harder for some people than it is for others. But it's really made impossible if we're just like, yeah, everyone experiences this. So those are my little thoughts on this for today. So when you are working with the lovely people that you get to work with, it's really thinking about what do they need from me? Who do they need me to be? Yes, they need validating, but hearing you say, oh gosh, yeah, everyone experiences that, it isn't very validating. It actually shoots them down. It actually makes them stay quiet, So validating with, I hear you, gosh, that's awful. How did you feel about that? Acknowledging, yes, you're not alone. You're really not alone. And affirming that they have still got their own power, their own agency, their own voice. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. A bit of a different one today. Not so much business focused, but as you know, a great service is very important to our clients. And as ever, I would love to know your thoughts on this topic and anything that it's made you think about on the back of this. Have a beautiful day and I shall speak to you all soon. Take care. Bye. Thank you for listening to Rockabye Revenue. I hope this episode has left you with some fresh ideas and bundles of motivation. If you enjoyed this episode, do make sure you click subscribe so you never miss an installment. And if you found this episode useful, I'd love you forever if you leave a 5-star review, helping this podcast reach the ears of more of the helpers in this world. And remember, keep changing lives. See you next time.